We want to take a look today at the good old-fashioned circular saw and a more sophisticated track saw, and see which one might be appropriate for whatever job you have to do. Should you own one of them? Should you own the other? Or should you, in fact, own both of them? The circular saw, I think, is probably more common and more well known than this track saw. But the circular saw has a smallish circular blade. It's probably 7 or 8 inches. And then it has this flat surface, and you pass the circular saw, put this surface onto the top of the wood that you're cutting, and you pass the circular saw over the wood to cut it. And this blade guard pushes automatically out of the way by the wood you're cutting, and then when you're done, it goes back for safety reasons. Obviously, if you were to set this down with a spinning blade without this blade guard, or if you got your hand in there, that would not be good. The track saw runs on a track, and it has grooves and wheels and all sorts of things on the bottom surface. And then it has a blade hiding inside of this case here. You can see the metal blade. And you plunge the blade down to the side of the track, and you run it then along the piece of wood to make the cut. And when you're done, when you've gone completely through the wood, you just bring the blade back up, and it goes back into the case safely so that you're not going to harm yourself. Now, both of them make straight cuts across a piece of wood. In many cases, it would be sheet goods like plywood. In other cases, smaller pieces. Although things get more difficult and a bit more dangerous as you move to a smaller piece of wood to cut with either of these. They're very handy because you can take them to the job site. You do not have to bring the wood into your workshop where you might have a table saw like these both are sitting on. The table saw would be more accurate, but you would have to bring the work to it. By the way, if you'd like to see a comparison of a track saw and a table saw, there'll be a link below to a video we've done on that. And if you wanted to see a comparison between the circular saw and the table saw, we'll have another link because we did another video comparing those two. But today, we're looking at these two. So these are portable saws that go to the job site. They're good for handling large sheet goods, and they're also good for cutting smaller pieces of wood, although there are safety concerns with doing that. So, as you can see by looking at it, this track saw is more sophisticated and more expensive than the simple circular saw. So, is this adequate, or do I need to spend more money and get myself a track saw? Why would I want to have a track saw when I have a circular saw? So both saws allow you to make a 45-degree angle miter cut. And in this saw, it's done by changing the orientation of this bottom plate relative to the blade. And on this one, it's done by changing the blade relative to the flat bottom of the saw. But in either one, you can do a 45-degree cut. The real difference between the two is accuracy. This, you can cut a straight line, but it's only a fairly straight line, or an approximate straight line. So for instance, you could not do cabinet work where you needed an absolute straight finished line. But you can cut 2x4s with it, or you could cut plywood with it if it's not going to be used in a cabinet kind of situation. This saw, on the other hand, because of the track and because of how solid that is, and because of how it controls the movement of this saw over the work, you can do an absolutely perfect straight cut without any wavering at all. And you can do just as straight a cut as you can do with this table saw, for instance. So you could do cabinet work, cabinet grade work, and cabinet grade cuts at a job site. This saw you can clamp, for instance, a piece of wood across your work and butt the edge of this bottom plate against that piece of wood to make your cut, and that would improve the accuracy of your straight cut. It would make it pretty straight, but not absolutely straight in my experience as you get with this track saw. Now the track saw suffers from being more expensive, and so you're going to have to invest more money in this kind of a saw than you would. These are very cheap. This can be very expensive. However, in the last 2 or 3 years, there have sprung up several manufacturers of very good track saws, and because there's now competition in that space, you can get a track saw for much less than you used to be able to 4 or 5 years ago. So again, to summarize, both saws are good for doing the cuts at the job site, as opposed to bringing the work into your workshop. So you can easily, they're very portable. They're not terribly expensive compared to a table saw, although this one can get somewhat pricey depending on how high a quality one you purchase. This one is a bit safer, and it's definitely much more accurate than the circular saw. So I hope you've enjoyed the content here today, and if you have, there's a subscribe button. Please hit that, and we have put links to related videos down below.